Welcome to Coruzant Technologies, home of the Digital Executive Podcast.
Welcome to the Digital Executive. Today's guest is David Keller. David Keller is the Chief Market Strategist at StockCharts.com, where he helps investors minimize behavioral biases through technical analysis. He is a frequent host on StockCharts TV, and he relates mindfulness techniques to investor decision-making in his blog, The Mindful Investor. Dave is also president and chief strategist at Sierra Alpha Research, LLC, a boutique investment research firm focused on managing risk through market awareness. He combines the strength of technical analysis, behavioral finance, and data visualization to identify investment opportunities and enrich relationships between advisors and clients. Dave's blog, Market Misbehavior, explores the intersection between behavioral psychology and the financial markets. Well, good afternoon, Dave. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Brian. Good to be with you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you jumping on. I know we've had a little bit of a time before we started this recording, but it's really great to meet you. And what excites me, as I tell everybody, is I get to turn around and share your story with the world. So I'm very gracious and honored for that. And David, we're going to jump into the questions. You've got quite the career in the investment community, entrepreneurship, and now you're the Chief Market Strategist at StockCharts.com. Could you share with our audience the secret to your career growth and what inspires you?
I love that question. I love how you start with that, thinking of inspiration. So I've been in the financial industry for about 21 years and came into the financial industry knowing very little about anything about the financial markets and managed to sort of grow my skill set with a particular set of tools focused on investor psychology and decision-making, investor behavior. And that's led me to my current role at StockCharts. It's funny, I've often thought of myself as a right-brained person in a left-brained industry. And I learned as I looked around the room very quickly early on as a financial analyst, strategist at the junior level, that there are a lot of people that are very detail oriented, but weren't necessarily programmed to think creatively and sort of, think big picture about relationships. And that's really how my mind is wired. And I've found a lot of satisfaction in finding ways to satisfy that creative side of what I do through the course of a career in finance. And that's led me to focus really on investor behavior, decision-making, which is, a much softer side of the financial industry. And now at StockCharts, it's great because we're able to focus a lot on empowering individuals to make decisions. And I find being able to hear what they're struggling with, hear what our customers are struggling with as they try to make investment decisions and helping them sort of see a course through fairly uncertain market conditions has been very, very rewarding.
Great. Thank you for sharing. And it's got to be interesting working in your industry. Of course, there's a lot of volatility sometimes, but I appreciate your share on that. Thank you. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the economy and the pandemic just a tad. Everybody's had to make this shift, but can you tell us about where you see investing education going and why the needs for technical analysis and visuals are evolving?
It's fascinating if your listeners or if your viewers aren't familiar as much with technical analysis. It's really the idea of analyzing investor behavior visually, right? It's quantifying what investors are doing with their capital, buy and sell decisions, and quantifying them in a way that allows you to analyze them statistically over time. But it's really a visual form of analysis. And what's funny is the toolkit that we use is really based on things that Charles Dow wrote in for Barron's in the early 1900s, late 1800s. It goes back to Japanese rice traders in the 1600s. That's really the foundation of the toolkit that we use now. So even then, before fundamental analysis was even a thing, and before companies were required to report their business operations in a systematic, consistent way, individual investors, the only way they could compete with the robber barons in the 1920s and 30s was by using charts, by analyzing prices and trying to understand investor behavior as represented by price. So as the markets have evolved, as volatility has increased, as computing power has certainly drastically changed the way that the investment landscape evolves and the way that firms are designed, it certainly still is a very important toolkit to empower individual investors to have a seat at the table. And we always, the way that we think about it at StockCharts is empowering individual investors to make better decisions. And I think we've seen that in the last year more than in a long time, this idea of individual investors, new entrants into the financial markets, feeling empowered to make decisions and actually seeing a very real impact on stocks like GameStop and AMC and others recently. You've shown that individual investors can actually group together and have a direct impact on the financial markets in a way that will have ripple effects for months, if not years from now. So I think, there has always been a focus, I think, for some on educating individuals. I think that is becoming more and more important for financial firms, for participants in the market to not just, give investors access to the markets, but also give them the tools they need to make better decisions. And I think that's a really crucial differentiation. And that's really what we've tried to focus on. Our goal is to give people a toolkit to analyze the markets visually, but also give them expert commentary to show how others that have come before them have learned from their own experiences in the markets, but also education and what we call chart school, which is basically teaching people from the ground up. Here's what something looks like. Here's what here's what the experience is like. Here's what you could do. And I think there should be, and certainly there's an opportunity to have more and more of that in the coming months and years.
That's awesome. I appreciate, helping others learn more about your trade essentially from the ground up using these tools. So that's awesome. So Dave, you're obviously leveraging some new or emerging tech in your tech stack. Maybe you can dive just a little bit deeper on the recent launch of StockCharts TV on Demand. It's that 24/7 over-the-top video streaming channel devoted exclusively to financial charting and market analysis from leading technical experts.
Well, I feel like with many firms, Brian, we've sort of made that evaluation over the last year. How do we adapt in a new normal? And it's funny, I was talking to my mother earlier this week, and she asked, "So when do you think you're all going to go back to the office?" And my answer was, I don't know if that's ever actually going to happen exactly like it was before. I think there will certainly be a reversion back to some of the things that we used to do before February, March of 2020, but it's not going to go back exactly to that. So as a company, in terms of our management decisions, our technology decisions, our human resources decisions, it's really been focused on the fact that the world is certainly very fluid, and we have to be thinking about what a work environment is going to be looking like. So the same thing, we've put ourselves in our customers' shoes and thought about, and again, we are all investing our own money and trading on our own accounts always. So the thought is, what are we running into trying to do what we do remotely 100% of the time? How are we able to gain expertise and learn from others when we're not able to go to a conference or do many of the things that so many of us had gotten used to doing as part of our regular routine? And so for us, it was really focusing on how we could enable remote learning and allow an individual who has very little familiarity with the financial markets to quickly, sort of gain the expertise they would need to, hopefully learn to make better decisions and lean away from some of the poor decisions that unfortunately humans are hardwired to do. So part of that transition was really, rotating as much as we could, and now we're 100% in the cloud. That actually happened in 2019. Thankfully, we had finished the rotation into the cloud away from physical servers that we were using for part of the operation. That was done in time to benefit from that flexibility. And certainly we thought with our users, with our customers in mind, it's about having flexibility and having the ability to, learn and learn lessons and, put ideas into action whenever and wherever they were. So for us, StockCharts TV on Demand is a 24/7 streaming network. And this is now an on-demand platform on the web, but also on all the app stores. So, so from a mobile device, from anywhere, someone's able to actually see what's happening in the markets, hear how others are dealing with that, watch as others are able to ask questions yourself of, noteworthy experts and hear how they're sort of handling the market uncertainty. And again, our goal is to sort of raise the level of discourse, raise the level of expertise of individuals that are trying to get into the markets. And I think there's so much more that we could do. And I hope this is one of the many steps we're able to do for that.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Dave. I appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit about Dave. If you don't mind, Dave Keller, can you share something from your career experience that might be helpful for those looking to grow their career in either tech or entrepreneurship?
That's such an awesome question, and I'm humbled and very happy to be invited to be on your show, and I appreciate you thinking I'm worthy to ask that question, O'Brien. For me, I know over the last year, as we've all dealt with uncertainty, and we, obviously personally, we've all dealt with a lot of challenges and changes to family dynamics and how we're living and working and all of that. I think for me, one of the things professionally that's been most helpful is having a good network established to, with people I'm able to reach out to. So, earlier today, I was talking with a friend of mine who's at a financial firm and just talking about how they're thinking of reopening and how they're dealing with, working remotely and how they're trying to, empower their own employees and foster a sense of community with their coworkers. That's something we're all trying to deal with. It's very easy to face some of these things on our own and try to figure out solutions. But I have found over my career, the best, decisions I've made most likely have not just been me making a quick decision based on what I see. It's talking with others that have walked some of these paths before. And even though this particular set of circumstances is different, we've always dealt with uncertainty. We've had shocks to the system. We've had, things that happened out of nowhere. We all had to adjust with that. So learning from others that have come before me to adapt and how to maintain, growth through an uncertain period has been really, really helpful. So I would encourage people listening to, take time when things are great to be fostering a network and building, surrounding yourself with others that you can tap when you have questions. I think for me, that's been probably the most helpful part of the last year.
Great. Dave, I appreciate that. We talk about that on our show a lot, about mentorship and reaching out to kind of a lifeline. And I think that's so important. And this is something that in particular we like to do, is give back and mentor others, especially those coming out of college. So thanks again. And Dave, I just want to let you know it was a pleasure having you on today. And I look forward to speaking with you real soon.
Thanks so much, Brian. Take care.
Bye for now.